All right, so good afternoon, everybody. This is January the 24th, 2025. So just remember tomorrow will be 12525. That'll be a fun day, but it is Friday afternoon. We have just gotten back from Washington, D.C. on our trip to work with our Advocates for Families Act. And I wanted to share with you guys and just talk to you about what that process is like. I do have with me today on this Zoom training Terry LaPointe from Alabama and Tracy Cassidy from Kentucky, who joined us in Washington. And Terry's been there several times. Tracy was in a new trip for her, so I'm going to ask her in a few minutes to share her experience as well. So, just sort of a backup and an overview for the people who don't know a lot about Family Forward Project, because we are continuing to get our message out on a variety of platforms and a lot more new people. So, Family Forward Project is a grassroots organization that was created through a Facebook platform to invite families who'd been affected by the child welfare system to engage with us and with each other in talking about just their own situations, their own problems, and really try to make sure that we're being taking a supportive nature. Myself, I worked as an attorney in this area for 30 years, really trying to help families find their way through this system. I started studying more the underlying federal laws and federal funding, and just discovered that this federal funding created this perverse financial incentive. I am such a student of this issue. If y'all could see the tons of notebooks and printouts of white papers and stuff that I have, you would just probably just like shake your head. I was just looking today at a white paper that I pulled out from 2002, just like 3 or 4 years after the enactment of the Adoption and Safe Families Act. And I will say, in this white paper, it talks about the congressional hearings and the congressional presentations on ASFA, and how some people argued that it would be a price tag on the heads of children, which of course is the same message that we give today. So this is our mission, is to reform child welfare. We've been going to Washington, D.C. since 2015, prior to the pandemic, and started really working with legislators in about 2000, late 2016, 17, where we actively started knocking on doors for the Families First Preservation and Services Act, which passed in February 2018. So, as we found out that this great law passed and nobody was implementing it, as a just sort of a brain trust group of grassroots people, we started brainstorming about what can we do, what can be the next legislation that we can work on that can help families. And I said, let's try to take the simplest, most non-confrontational position and ask for advocates within the child welfare system. As an attorney, I know attorneys are not able to really advocate for the family to become stronger and better. They really have a pretty narrow track, which is they want to win, and they want to win legally. And often that means manipulating the system, not disclosing evidence, or trying to flip the script in a variety of ways. But it's not good enough, and it's causing, plus they drag cases out. So this is not going to continue to be productive to us. So we have Terry's joined us, and I'm going to let Terry go ahead and introduce herself some and how she sort of feels about what our grassroots efforts. So Terry, why don't you go ahead?
Hey everybody. Thanks for being involved. It takes all of us. It really does. So it, I feel like honestly, this trip was the best trip out of. I've been going since 2019. So and we've come a long way. We've met a lot of people. We've made a lot of relationships with some staffers and that, and we've gotten a lot of information out there, but this time we encountered more actual legislators than ever before. I mean, probably more this time than all the trips combined. I would say just about, not maybe not quite, but there's been a lot between us. And and I will say this about the staffers: never, ever, ever think that just because you can't get the congressperson themselves that you're not getting through. Um, Sometimes that may actually be true, as we found out with one, but many times the staffers are they are working on the bills. They're the ones doing the legwork and the grunt work and working on this. So and they change. Some of them are very young, but some of them are more experienced. And so as we build those relationships, it's great. But we actually got to talk to many of the Congress people, and when they see what's going on, they're just I don't know of any actual congressperson that we met, between a senator or representative, that wasn't very enthusiastic about supporting our bill when we actually talked to them. So it's hard work if you come with us. Tracy learned when we say, and there was a person that came with us. I said, wear comfortable shoes. Connie always says, wear comfortable shoes. We're not kidding. We're not kidding. It's what, an average of about 5 miles a day of walking. And one of those days, it was almost 5 miles just in two buildings. So we are doing a lot of walking. We're doing a lot of talking, but we work together. Each person says their piece, and everybody's part is important. And I want all of you to recognize that, you may not be a Connie regularly. You may not be this person or that person. That's okay. You're you. You are who you are. You have your story, and you have a part to play. And sometimes your part may reach a congressional person more than what I say or what Connie says. It's all of us working together, and this is not a partisan issue. It's very much bipartisan. I tell people all the time, very involved with Republicans in my state, but and I'm in a very red state, but I tell them all the time, it doesn't matter what the party. No, the people who, when you have your kids taken, they don't care what party you are. They just want their kids back. Y'all just want kids back. We want kids back. So yeah, it's hard work, but it is very much worth it. And we've built over time. We're building lifelong friendships. I consider Connie and Kathleen and Rachel, they're my sisters, and I love them with all of my heart.
Yeah. And okay, so Terry, so tell them now, sort of when you're there, the type of presentation. Some of these people may not know your background and your writing and your reporting. So
Okay.
so please explain to them, like, when you're there, what story are you telling to the legislative aides?
Okay. So I was a homeschool mom, and doing some writing on the side, and I saw some stories that were alarming that I thought were anomalies. And I thought, this is crazy. That cannot be the way this works, because Child Protective Services is just about taking children, protecting them from horrible, abusive parents. I honestly thought that. I didn't know. I didn't know any better. So after I'd written a couple of articles, I was approached by a media outlet and asked to start investigating stories for this website that was being formed called medicalkidnap.com. And I said, yes, I want to do that, because I want to know what's going on. Is this a threat to just everyday families across America? And so I started investigating, having no idea what I was getting into. My boss didn't have, none of us had any idea what we were getting into. So I have investigated hundreds and hundreds of stories from all over the country. So I can go into any legislator's office from whatever state, and I can say, in your state, I covered this story of these children being taken, and the things, but the things that this person in your state is saying is the same thing as California and Georgia and Wisconsin and Florida, red states, blue states, rich, poor. There, and I can I can take where everybody has their individual story and I can take that and say, this is everywhere. It's not just here. This isn't a one off. This isn't just an anomaly. We're hearing this all over the country. So I feel like that's kind of my strength. And then, and explaining to what happens with the child abuse pediatricians in the hospitals, because I've done a deep dive into them and I will be writing a book on child abuse pediatricians at some point. And then I also talk about the trafficking because we discovered that too. And I've written a book. I don't know where it's at. Voices that will not be silenced, and it's a story. It's not a medical kidnapping. It's a child protective services taking a child they never should have taken, adopting the child out to strangers, the whole fraud, the whole financial benefits coming to the state from ASPA and CAPTA and all of that. And then the senator Linda Collins Smith was working from Arkansas, was working with the grandmother, and they uncovered a huge evidence of trafficking of foster kids, and they had all the information. The senator did, and then she was murdered just before 4 days before she was going to go live and expose this on a show. So this story goes into all of that. So people that are not part of like our what we do, people can see, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is real. So
Yeah.
it's an
And
exposure.
yeah, and I met Terry pretty early on when she was
Mm-hmm.
doing medical kidnap, and
Right.
she came to Nashville to cover one of the stories that I was working on. And I'll say now a lot of people, there's been a lot of news stories, the Justine Pelletier case. There's been some fractured rib cases that have appeared on like Dr. Phil and stuff, and of course the Maya case out of Florida. So there's more chatter about it now, but I will say that Terry was one of those pioneers, and I have printed off most of her stories and have saved them to PDF copies. So I've got them memorialized. No matter what happens to her, we're hanging on to them. All right. So, and then Tracy was new coming to Washington. So, an important part about the Washington journey is the sort of the explanation about how this works, and then also the real human tragedy of CPS. So, I kind of start the meetings typically. I tell, that I'm an attorney. I've worked in it in 30 years. I talk about how hard I work for families. And then I started digging into the federal legislation and the funding. And then I talk about the perverse and financial incentives, the conflicts of interest, the delays in the court system, the failure to follow even federal mandates such as relative placement. And then I show them some actual graphics about the funding so that they can see that most of the funding is going to removal and adoption and not to family stabilization. So therefore, they are always incentivized to remove children. So I kind of go into that. We try to keep our whole meeting within 30 minutes. And so I try to spend about 5 minutes. I have a lot I want to say. I try not to talk too fast, but it's very, very important to keep it in very sort of simple terms, like you're talking to a sixth grader who hasn't even had a civics class yet. Even though these legislative aides are very intelligent, we often talk to legislative directors who are the chief of the legislation for the congressperson, even though they know a lot about how bills are passed and their committee work. They don't really have a very high knowledge of the child welfare system or Title IV-E. So I kind of talk about that. And then, Terry does talk a little bit about the medical kidnapping aspect of it. And I always like to have one or two real life stories of families who have been affected, who've lost their children and or who still have their children, but they went through some tragic circumstances where they almost lost their children. So Tracy, I met through Family Forward Project, and I usually reach out about talking to people about going to Washington, and I'm not sure if she contacted me or I contacted her, but we agreed that she was going to come, and um, uh, so Tracy, I know you're driving, but I want you to just tell people just kind of an
Yeah.
outline of your story and why you're here. And I particularly want you to talk about that Washington
So
experience. Okay.
absolutely. Well, it was nothing I expected. I think we had a very warm reception. I did a bunch of stuffy, you know, legal people that didn't want to speak with us that thought we were a bomb. Instead, everyone was very receptive. I mean, my story is 20 years ago, I was going to a custody battle with two of my children, and unfortunately, my ex decided to weaponize social services against me. And my kids were taken from me twice. I got them back twice. And later on, I became a resident foster parent in Illinois and a substitute teacher when I had moved back to Kentucky. Then my grandson was taken from my oldest daughter, which was one of the children I was in the midst of a custody battle all those years ago. She now unfortunately suffers schizoaffective disorder. So, the 2008 Family First Bill, that family are supposed to be chosen first. Well, her second child, granddaughter, was living with us. The first child ended up getting adopted out. I've established a relationship with these foster parents, and we plan on getting siblings together to grow up as much as possible. Anyway, so our granddaughter resided with us for 8 months, and we went and we filed a emergency custody order because my daughter wanted to take her to live in a rainforest in Ecuador, and she was 2 years old at the time, and my daughter couldn't walk, and so we knew she was in danger. So we filed it. The social worker wanted her to stay with us, was not allowed to tell anyone her recommendation, and they dismissed ours, filed their own, cabinet got custody, we got placed, and we had to make the daughter leave. And I her anyway, stuff about us. It was unfounded, but the local supervisor was concerned. So I was told to the grad we were going to be and she never so she went up took my daughter that was just kidding.
Okay, Tracy, we are
tragedy of her mom
yeah,
not being there anymore. And
yeah,
we
Tracy,
were told
we're having a really
we
hard
were
time
told
hearing
that
you.
we were going to get the doctor. Oh, I'm sorry. What part? Okay. Well, I'll try to shorten it and hopefully you'll hear what I have to say. My husband and I are veterans. My husband and I are certified therapeutic foster parents. And 2 weeks before our granddaughter was supposed to be home permanently, false allegations were made against us. The cabinet said they were going to unsubstantiate it. And before they could, we were indicted on felony child abuse charges. We now have a jury trial set for April 30th. We have not seen our granddaughter since. She's now 4. We have 3 other grandchildren in our home that we've been raising since birth that are also bonded with our granddaughter. So it's hurting all 4 of them. So spit family first, and that's where we are. So I kind of gave a condensed version of that while we were in D.C., and everyone was receptive to everything we had to say for the most part. So I appreciate the experience, and I'm proud to be, someday soon, a family forward advocate, family advocate. And Connie is very inspirational. The classes she teaches are so beneficial to everyone. So I highly recommend them. I've taken almost all of them. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. All right, good, Tracy. Thank you. You were a little choppy there for a little bit, but I will say Tracy has a couple of very important elements in her case that I have seen repeated over and over. So, first of all, she's a grandparent. She's a grandparent who had helped take care of her children, grandchildren. She's a therapeutic foster parent. Had been in the military. She's a veteran. And she was falsely accused of child abuse. And those are some of the repeat, it's like every case is like a vegetable stew, right? There are different elements that's thrown into it, but basically you get down to the meat and potatoes and you have the same stories over and over again. So she was able to express, here she was, a grandparent who was taking care of other grandchildren, and she was taking care of this grandchild, and then she was stripped of that ability to do that, and yet she's still taking care of the other children. So it just makes no sense. So so those are important. And then also very important is we had Bailey Templeton from Illinois with us, and I don't know if you followed some of the pictures. Now, when I'm in Washington, some of the pictures end up on my personal timeline and some of them end up in Family Forward Project. I am sorry about that, but we're so tired. I just end up uploading them wherever my fingers go at that time. So if you miss some of those, you might check those in our photos, either on Family Forward Project or go to my personal profile. So when we go, we sort of create a target. It might be a certain committee. It might be that we go and we look at another bill that recently passed and see who's supporting it or sponsoring it. Or it might be a special caucus. So there are congressional family caucuses, congressional fathers caucus. So we might, drill down into people that, because there's 435 people in Congress. So we cannot see everyone every time. And we need, a handful of supporters. And what happens is if you can get a handful of supporters, if you can get 10, 15, even 20, then things after that sort of steamroll. And once people see, because they have, they're collegiate up there. So they see that this congressman was a co-sponsor or supported it, then they'll vote yes. Especially a bill like this, because it is not a high impact bill. We're not asking for any additional money to be attached to it, and we're not criminalizing anybody. All we're saying is that just like other areas of vulnerable populations, you have advocates for veterans, you have advocates for mental health, you have advocates for substance abuse. So we just want there to be able to be advocates for parents so they can engage and not feel guilty, so they can engage with other parents. They can engage with advocates without feeling like everything has to be approved by the court or their attorney. And I do want to say, and I express this when I go there, that this is a growing concept. This is not just Connie Regulate. This is not just Family Forward Project. The American Bar Association is now working with Lived Experience and National Council for Child Welfare, I think it's called, or Parents Representation. They're looking at those lived experience advocates. So lived experience is important, but more than lived experience, you need to be able to have the training that we're doing so that you can help direct people to learn the basics of the system. Because even though you have lived experience, the next case that you try to support or help somebody with, it's not going to be just like your case, right? There's going to be some other element, like maybe your case was poverty and irregular resident, you couldn't had housing instability, but maybe the next case is substance abuse, or maybe the next case is an abusive step parent. So you've got to really, when you start to advocate, you've got to help a person, first of all, just understand, look, this is what the system looks like, and this is how it works. And that's why I do one on the tricks, the politics, the players, what evidence is, what authentication of records is, et cetera. So you can direct people, say, look, go get this basic training, and then let's start tearing apart your case and seeing what we can do. So that is my end goal for advocates, to be able to direct people to get some of their own training to understand the systems, and then for you to work individually to help strengthen their cases. All right, so I'm going to try here to be really brave and try to share my screen to take you to our bill. I don't know if it's going to work because, every time I try to do this, I screw up, but you may have to help me and let me know that I've properly shared it. Okay, so here you go, if you are ready. All right, so I'm trying to see. Okay, so let's see if I can see you all over here. Now, I don't know what you should be able to see me with a screen behind me. Is that right? Terry, put your thumb up. Okay, very good.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so I have you just on the Facebook. This is where this is my Facebook page, and this is where a bunch of our pictures are that you can see that we went to several different offices. We have some collegial time. We go and we have dinner together. We run into people in the hallways. This picture right here is kind of interesting. This is all the streets they had blocked off in DC. This was the Maha dinner that we went to, which we really, really enjoyed. Kind of a ball. Actually, we didn't get to go for the dinner. And if we do catch somebody in the hallway, like this picture right here is Senator Susan Collins. This one over here is Senator Joni Ernst. And I always tell advocates going up there, it's like you need to watch a little C-SPAN so you know what these people look like when you see them in the hallway. Because sometimes we will see somebody and we'll just say, Senator Collins, and we just call their name and they'll look and they love to have their picture taken because now they know with social media that their picture is going to end up on social media. There's a few of them that are kind of skeptical because they're afraid their picture will be turned into a bad meme, I think, or something. But I think they also know that if you're standing beside them, it's not going to be too bad of a meme, right? So this is from the Facebook, just showing some of those shots. All right, now I'm going to switch over to this one. Now, can you see the HR 8866? Can you see that?
Yes.
Somebody? Okay, good.
Yep.
All right, so this is an important website right here. It's called congress.gov, and this is where you can do a few things, which one of them is you can look at our bill. Now, this is last year's bill. Important thing is that we have to reintroduce our bill because Congress runs in a 2-year term. And so 2024 was the end of the 2-year term. If you do not get your bill passed within that 2-year term, it has to be reintroduced. So this is last year's bill, HR 8866, and this shows that it was introduced on June 27th, 2024. That was a little late. We started really working on family advocacy in about May. I think we talked about a little bit the year before, but not a lot. But we really started pushing it in May. And we got Barry Moore to, actually, it was the year before because Barry Moore's office sent us the first draft of the bill right at the beginning of January 2024. And we were hoping we could add more sponsors before we introduced it. We only got the one sponsor. We got one Democrat sponsor, and she lost the election. So we're going to have to start over with some of those sponsors as well. But if you get to this page, and you can see here's a search bar up here. I just put in HR 8866, and it pulls up the bill. And then you have these different tabs down here. So the tab is with the start of a new Congress, summaries from prior Congresses may be delayed or abbreviated. Okay, so they don't have the summary up there, but you can go over here to text and you can get the actual text of our bill. This is the way it's actually written. It tells Barry Moore of Alabama and Miss Wild, who was our Democrat, were introducing the bill, and it was referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, and it is called the Advocates for Families Act of 2024. And what this bill says is that it is amending 42 USC 622B, which is Title 4B. And we ask that there be an introduction that says that, and this is kind of it right here. Hang on. That the laws and procedures of the state shall permit any parent, foster parent, or legal guardian of a child to seek and receive the services of a family advocate who shall have the authority to represent the interest and act on behalf of the parent, foster parent, or legal guardian throughout any child welfare case or interaction involving the child without the obligation of the state to pay or to provide the services. The state shall implement the appropriate services and govern the professional conduct and how the state informs the parent, foster parent, or legal guardian. The state shall establish that as well. All right, so it's pretty short. That's pretty much the bill. Right here, then, it's for the states to report, written report, let me see here, with respect to the rights of the parent, the foster parent, and the legal guardian. And they have to report that back to Congress, which is what we want. We want that because we believe there will be changes and we'll be able to expand it. Now, again, very, very simple bill. There's no request for funding in here, which you'll find under Title 4B. There's always funding issues involved, and there is no requirement that the state pay for it or that the state is, or that the parent is required to accept it. Now, some people will say, why do you have foster parent in there? Well, unfortunately, we do have to work with some of the foster parent advocates, and so foster parents are entitled to have advocates. So we don't really support that too much. However, I will say I'm working with a couple foster parents right now who've really been so helpful in many, many ways and feel like they're not being heard as well. So trying to help them get through the system also. So we go around and we say, we have this bill for it's a very easy when it's printed up on a piece of paper, it's only 4 pages long. And we say we've got this very simple bill and we just want advocates to participate. And then they have a certain set of questions. Sometimes they ask like, who are these advocates? And the question I love is, are there enough advocates for everybody right now? And I'm like, no, but you've all heard of build it and they shall come, right? I also talk about CASA because the way CASA started was CASA just got the approval to participate, and then they built their organization around that. So this is the bill, and then I'm just going to go back up here to the tabs. And as we get our bill introduced, you'll see there's another tab for like actions. The actions will tell you the dates, when it was introduced, when it was referred, and you'll see down here, it wasn't introduced to the subcommittee until December the 17th. And that's unfortunate. I don't know why it took so long. It would still have to go to the subcommittee, then have a hearing on markup, and then be introduced. So it's a lot of work. I mean, it's just a lot of work, and it requires us just constantly working it, right? We have to keep working it. So we are going to, now that we have this basic, and now that we're actually doing the advocate training, our job now is to, number one, get some additional support. So whatever state you are in, I need you to start looking at your states and trying to figure out if we can find at least one or two favorable state representatives or state senators who understand, that there are big problems with their child welfare system and that they want to do something and they don't know what to do. And I know in just the states kind of surrounding me, of course, I've worked with Terry. We have a great state representative down there named Kenneth Pascal. He's worked on the parental rights bill and he's working on a bill this year. And then I know I have a couple in Tennessee, and it's not really enough. I've had a hard time getting enough passion about it to make drastic changes in the state law. But if we can get them to write just a real short support letter that says, in my state, I can see that there are problems with child welfare, and having an advocate available would be beneficial just so that we can figure out what's going on. They don't even know what's going on, a lot of them. So with your state legislators, the other thing is any type of nonprofit or service organization that you just see in your area. And I know here in our little meeting here, we have several different states covered. So we don't necessarily need to have the largest organization like, United Way or Red Cross. There are tons and tons and tons of smaller groups. There's 0 to 3. There's other, certain legal defense funds, et cetera. So, if you guys as worker bees now to try to help us with grassroots lobbying, look around and see where are places where I can get support. Maybe it's a pastor, maybe it's a church, right? Maybe there's a particular church that has seen some of the problems and wants families to be in a better situation. So that's our goal at this point. So we are going to plan an April trip. It is going to be April 13th to the 18th. I can tell you that. So if you want to mark your calendars for that, we're not sure of all the details as far as how it's going to. There are some people who want to do kind of a rally and sort of group class. I am more interested in getting some people to go around and help us lobby and actually keep talking to these legislators and not let up, because I'm hoping that we get the bill reintroduced in February. If we can get it reintroduced in February, we're going to have a brand new bill that we can go around and ask sponsors. Now, we spoke to about 30 different offices, and I feel pretty good if we can get some outside support, just a little bit of outside support, that we can start tagging sponsors onto this bill. So, so that's really, this training today was really just kind of let you know what we did, what we're doing, how we approach this, how important this is, how much I implore y'all to help us. And also, we will then, talk about some state legislation. Just real brief, I will tell you there's a couple of things coming up state-wise. Terry, they're working on a bill in Alabama just for better due process rights during an investigation. There's a bill in Texas regarding child cancer and that parents have a right to get second opinions and to refuse chemotherapy and that kind of toxic treatment. And there's a bill in Oklahoma about wrongful removals. So slowly, our next step is to kind of organize a really a policy group, a policy, and take a policy stand at the state level as well. But that is kind of where we are. And if anybody, typically I stop recording at the end of the regular trainings, but while we are recording, is there anybody who has a particular question about either our trip or what you can do where you are? Yep, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, you said it's on the 13th through the 18th of April, the trip. Do
Yes.
you post it, do you hook up together and travel together, or do we meet each other there, or do we pay for our own rooms, or we do it all together?
Okay, good question. All right, so that's a combination of a lot of things. So we typically find our own way there. Now, there are some people, what state are you in, Larry?
Alabama.
Okay, Alabama.
Oh, really? What part?
I'm downtown. I'm
Birmingham?
just moving to Birmingham.
Oh, I'm in Odenville.
Are
Um,
you? Okay.
yeah.
Sounds good.
And Kenneth Pascal, let me tell you just real quick. Kenneth Pascal is speaking at the Well, no. Let's get in touch. We have to confirm that. We want him to speak. Never mind. Sorry, but
Okay, so
we'll get you
yeah,
connected.
Larry, maybe
I always give
Larry.
you my number. Go ahead.
Okay, why don't you put it in the chat? Can you put your number and
The
email in the
chat.
chat?
Yeah.
And then Terry, check that. So, okay, so we have been fortunate to be able to provide some housing, and uh, it's sort of varies. So as we probably here within the next few weeks, I've got to get everything together, but in the next few weeks, we'll probably put some kind of form or something up to see who feels like they can make a commitment. Sometimes we've had people carpool together to drive up there. We have some housing. Sometimes we've been able to provide enough for everybody, sometimes not. Sometimes we take contributions and then sort of organize housing. Like, we did the campground one time and, people just contributed like $100, for their stay at the campground in the cabins. So if you will watch, just stay watching Family Forward Project. Are you in the Family Forward Project on Facebook?
For me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And watch events. I will probably put it up in an event pretty soon and start a chat about that so we can see who can make it. And then if you are
Okay.
going to, lobby, then we kind of have a phone call, sort of talk about what your story is and what you want to express. Just remember, you only get about 3 or 4 minutes max. So, but your story is very important, and these people need to hear what's going on, both from moms and from dads and from grandparents. So just we'll keep you posted on that, but thank you for asking. Any Jen?
I
Sounds
just
good.
want to say hi, Larry, and thank you for joining. Thank you for making it here.
Yeah.
Hi.
And Jen?
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I know that. Thank you, Larry.
Bye-bye.
I know that I'll be there the 13th through the 18th. That was already on my paperwork.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Great, Lynn. Thank you. Lynn, where are you located?
I'm in West Virginia.
Okay. All right. So watch again for the event as well. So we'll put it up and then I can start, figure out who's going and what kind of accommodations and stuff we can
Well,
make.
I know I can make it for sure.
Okay.
Well, I know that I'm going to be there 100% because of what's
Me
going on in
too.
West Virginia. It's just horrific.
Yeah. And we'll do another, training just to talk about all those. Okay. So Jen has her hand raised. Go ahead, Jen.
Hi, Connie. You may remember me. I'm the parent from Tennessee that contacted you in 2020 where the Salvation Army had our kids trafficked to them, and they're the whistleblower. So isn't this just due process, conflict of interest? Shoot me. This is ridiculous. I wanted to know something about what Shar was telling me today, something about their budget didn't pass and funding. You know, I just got here. I'm sorry if I came late to the party. I don't mean for you to have to repeat yourself necessarily, but can you tell me anything about that, please?
Okay, so I believe what you're probably talking about is Title 4E, which is CAPTA, is expired. Okay, so it was first passed in 1974, and then it was supposed to, it's been reauthorized a couple times, and then it was up for reauthorization in 2022. It did not pass. So technically, September 2023, CAPTA expired. Now, unfortunately, in the land at the end of the yellow brick road, there's this thing called Congress where they just fund things anyway. So it is still funded. I'm going to say that a very strong administration, executive administration, could, because it's expired, could cut off the funding with the swipe of a pen. So we need to educate our administration about that, but that's where that funding issue is. All
Okay.
right.
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. Has anyone emphasized the following? All right, so we've got an executive and a judicial branch completely out of control. They've gone rogue. They're kidnapping kids. They're trafficking them. We've got dead kids left and right. My oldest was just recently institutionalized, and I can't even find him because of all the privacy laws. Is anyone aware that in the Reconstruction Amendment 13, 14, and 15, there are clauses which articulate the following? It is Congress's job to become the enforcement arm. When we have problems with the executive and the judiciary, those clauses appear at the end, and you can go to ChatGPT and ask it to tell you what is the fullness of the meaning of the language at the end of Amendments 13, 14, and 15. That Congress has the power to enforce. So in our writing to our legislators, it is not merely remiss of them to be ignoring us and refusing to include that which we propose. It is complicitness that they are not hearing us and they are not doing more to prevent these crimes. They're atrocity crimes.
Okay. I respect that and that information. We are going to get nowhere with that. I'll just tell you. So we need to focus on what we're doing, and what we are doing is trying to create the advocacy platform. Okay, so that's what we're sticking with, and we can't. That's where we have to stay focused. So anybody else, I really want to talk about the advocacy that we're doing, and the going to Washington, how you can help with that and how you can help at the state level. So
Can we, not to cut you off, Miss Connie, but to the last lady that was talking,
yes.
to the last lady that was talking, could we not, because it's an interest of hers and it means something to her, could we not eventually figure out what that is, because that might be a very important piece of information down the road. And I'm going to tell you why. Because she just told us 13th, 14th, and 15th has a meaning. That meaning we are not using. So if we really down at the end, not right now because we're learning from you, but there is a reason why it's there. And we must institute everything that we know. But before, like for me, because she just told me that, I will go in my house now and I will sit down. And I don't know if anybody ever watches me on my Facebook page, but everything that I report, I dot my I's and cross my T's. So since she told me that, I'm going to go in there now, because as we're aware, we have to write letters, like you said, to people. And if there's any truth of the light in that, then that needs to be in the letter, because now we understand, wait, You're going to work for us. You're going to train us, and we're going to do everything professional by you because you are an attorney and you can guide us on everything that we need to know. Like I would say, we all have heads, but there's a matriarch that we come learning from. And with all of us together, and we all get on the same platform of turn our kids back, let's fight for the people who has been falsely allocated towards, it's going to be stronger. And that's why I follow you, because I'm aware of what I need to acknowledge that. But the person that said 13, 14, 15, the next time we come back with Miss Connie, instead of you telling us to dig into it, I need to know from you, if we write a letter, what would you put in that letter using 13, 14, and 15?
Okay, are you asking me?
No, ma'am, I'm talking to the lady that was talking. I'm
Okay,
saying,
so
I write to them quarterly, every quarter since 2020. Even before that, I was writing to my own legislator, March Blackburn. She was part of the House of Representatives at the time. She wasn't a senator then. She was an HOR rep. But I wrote to her, and I continue to write quarterly. And I put in there, look, if you, I don't have a law degree like the rest of y'all. Y'all should know this like
oh, I
better
don't have
than
a law
me.
degree. I'm going off of Miss
I
Connie.
don't have a
I
law.
think you're the only
saying-
lawyer. Are you the only lawyer, Connie? Miss Connie?
No. What I'm saying is, dear Congressperson, and I go by name. I go to each of their websites. Each and every single one of them gets a mailing from me on a quarterly basis. And I said, look, I don't have a law degree, but I can read the.
okay, look, we're stopping right here. I am so sorry, but this is not the topic that we're talking about right now. Okay, so we're talking about what the Family Forward Project is doing to move to the next level. Okay, and I appreciate what you're saying. And if you guys want to have a little forum on that, you can do it. Okay, I'm not going to go there at this point. I'm not saying, look, I've done civil rights cases, I've done constitutional challenges. I'm not ignorant of the Constitution. Constitutional law, conflicts of law were my best grades in law school. I love those topics, but we're not going to go into the weeds on something that is not going to help us at this point. We've got to move the dial. Okay, we have to move the dial. And what do we need to move the dial? 85% of the children are removed for what's called neglect. And they don't know in Washington, D.C., what neglect is. I tell them all the time, until you know what those precursor events are that are causing people to get into the situations that they're getting into, that you can't do anything to help. Okay.
Amen.
That's where we are. We're staying on that track. And again, anybody has other ideas, I'm not going to dish your ideas, but this is a track that we're moving on so that we can. I want 200,000 kids out of foster care. Okay.
Yeah.
There's six. I tell people when I go to Washington that we can reduce foster care by 30% because of the failure to place with relatives and the failure to identify neglect and what the needs of the family are. That's what we're sticking on. Okay, that's our
very
story.
true.
We're sticking to it.
And,
So,
and
Yeah.
And on
I,
that
I like
track,
I like that, Tony, because you
and
said
on
you
that
get
track,
right to
there
the
was a
point of
lady
that,
who passed.
and that stopped a lot of termination of parents' rights. Also, what is right now is a big issue in going into Washington D.C. is restating parents' rights from neglect. What is neglect? Got somebody called on you, said it was neglect, and you did your services, and they still took your kids away from you.
right, right.
So there's a big
Yes.
awareness, but once we push forward, we get to those answers, and we need more people speaking up, like you said, and going to D.C. and expressing their cases.
Right, right. Okay,
Can
Jennifer.
can I say something, Connie? I don't even know how to do the
On
hand
that track,
thing. We have to establish a foundation first and our infrastructure in order to get in there and then work the issues out. Is that what you're trying to explain, Connie? That the advocates have to get in as advocates first as a foundation. We are the foundation going in. Then once we get there, anything that we see as a whole for that to make this system, open up to what we're seeing and saying, then we'll be in a better position to bring that through. Is that sound right?
Okay, so, well, first of all, I'm going to back up again. I have 30 years experience of walking through these courtrooms with families. I've walked all over half of the counties in Tennessee, 3 other states. I've had civil rights cases. I have 2 big civil rights cases that established that furthered the rights of families and children. One of them is from saying that the Fourth Amendment applies to social workers, which sounds silly and crazy now, but somebody had to go do it. And I'm the one who went and did it. I
Thank
also
you.
have established in the Sixth Circuit that it's a constitutional violation to put a child in solitary confinement. I've done it. Okay. I've been there. I have seen all kinds of issues. We decided and this group that goes to DC with together, and Terry can nod on this, there are about a dozen of us that have consistently gone, and when we're not meeting, we're brainstorming, we're trying to figure out what to do, we're looking at everything going on, and we started focusing our intention on developing qualified advocates to help families. And we're not moving totally upstream, because there are organizations like the American Bar Association is looking for lived experience. Okay. There are social work organizations that are trying to figure out better ways to do this. So our contribution to turning around the Titanic, or shifting it 3 degrees, as I always tell them in Washington, is to create a developed advocacy program so that when you get, for instance, let's take Tracy's case. When Tracy was denied her petition for emergency custody, and the state agency was granted petition, she should have been able to have a support system right then who got her redirected and sort of helped her and her attorney focus on the fact that right then and there, they should have been the permanent guardians of those children. So same thing with all the cases that Terry's worked on over and over and over. We now have enough expertise out there to recognize brittle bone syndrome, to recognize some of these other, complex medical conditions. I've had conditions with children who've had Crohn's disease, who's had other other medical issues. So we have that expertise surrounding us of what to do when things occur, like truancy. I had a mom have her kids removed for truancy, and had she had an advocate right then, we would have been able to redirect it. Our goal is to reduce foster care by 30%. There is an average of 600,000 kids in the system. That means that we've got to support the families and help them get redirected. Ultimately, my goal, my big goal, is to rewrite Title IV-E totally. Okay, I tell all these legislators, I'm like, there is an inherent, irreconcilable, internal conflict of interest financially, and until we resolve that, we cannot move forward. So I would love to help rewrite Title IV-E, but first we have to create advocates. Jennifer, you have your hand up? Can you talk, please?
Yes. Can we also keep in mind that
you got muted? Jen, unmute yourself.
Are you
You're
there?
muted.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it unmuted now?
I thought I heard
It's
someone
unmuted.
else start
Good.
talking.
Okay. I don't want to speak over anybody, but Connie, were you?
Oh,
Well,
I think we're just getting confused.
okay, I have I have Jen and Jennifer. Is it the same person?
No, two different Jens. I'm Jen, she's Jennifer.
Okay, I'm talking to Jennifer Barrington right now, please.
Okay.
Okay, hi. Okay, so just a couple of things. Well, first of all, I've had success that I didn't know I would have just by calling the senator so I have this senator that comes into the library where I live, and he drops off different kind of educational materials all the time. And so one day I picked it up and it said, it was like a beginner's guide to legislative process. And so I got, reading through it, and I called there, and I was just like, I want to actually, talk to someone about this. And the guy was like, well, why don't you tell me what's going on? And I literally laid everything out in this guy. And not even a week later, I got a memo from DHS here in Michigan. and they had a memo about what I talked to that guy about
Oh, great.
on why I could never find the information while I was doing the case. And he even used my language, why you've never been able to find this information till now. And so you don't have to in every, I don't know any other state what they do there, but here in my state in Michigan, I've had small successes that I didn't even know were going to be big successes. You know what I'm saying? That small success with actually calling them produce something I wasn't even imagining. So I know that actually contacting these people does work. There is people that are waiting for your phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
But now when I go and I'm trying to find one or two favorable state senators to support this bill,
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing a support letter, and then and I'm asking them to write the support letter that they do see it's a problem and that they think that advocates would be beneficial, right?
Right.
So where can I get support? Like, where can I start? There was something else you said after that. Where can I start getting support for other people to write the letters? So you were talking about other organizations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so good. So first question, as far as the legislators, so go to your legislative website and look at the committees. And there's going to be some committee that has to do with either children and families. Sometimes it's under the Civil Justice Committee. Look for the legislators serving in those committees. And then if you go, typically on most legislative websites, you can go to that legislator and you can go to their profile page. It's kind of like a legislative Facebook in a way, because you can go to their profile page and you can pull up and there's typically a tab to look at their legislation. And so you look at their legislation and you can see if they have any interest at all. You can look at their committees and you can look at their legislation. So look at the committee, find out what committees are handling it. You can go and look at, if you figure out who is on the committee, go look at their legislation. Or another thing is to try to just Google and find. So in Michigan, I can't think of any particular laws that have come up in Michigan, but if you can find some stories, maybe another way to do it is just Google stories about Michigan and foster care. And often the reporter will contact if it's an issue, they'll contact a legislator or two and try to get them to make comments. And so I know they always do that in Tennessee. And so you find out that, the reporter called Representative Susan Smith, and Susan Smith is outraged, blah, 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 blah. And then you can follow up. So it's a little bit of research, a little bit of digging around, but you can find the legislator. And then as far as once you've identified one or two people who've showed up, then other people that, if we can identify other family forward people in Michigan, then you can help them, get them to help with that. So, and Terry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, along that line, to find other stories, if you go to the medicalkidnap.com website, it's kind of got crazy stuff now, but you can put in your state. I know I've covered several Michigan stories, and I think Leilani's mom is very involved, and she is interested in getting involved. I need to try to connect you with her because they got her back, and but you could go in your state on that website and pull up the stories and see if you can find a way to connect them, or you can contact me and ask me if I'm still in contact. Some of the people I'm in contact with, some I'm not, but that way you can just search for stories in your state that way.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Jennifer, does that help?
It does, definitely. But so the places that I'm reaching out to, you said something about nonprofit organizations, reaching out to them about the Family Forward Project. In what way would you like us to do that? Like, would you like us to put them to your website? How would you like us to approach that?
So okay, great. A good question. So depending on your comfort level, now that you've sort of listened today to what we're doing and you see the bill, you have the number for the bill, you can pull it up yourself, you can make a copy of it, and you can print it off. They actually have a PDF form of it you can print off. And if you, for instance, some of the issues, like right now, there are nonprofits for what's called 0 to 3, which are really focusing on children who are children of people who have had some addiction issues. There are nonprofits for to protect teens from suicide, which often those children have ended up being involved in the child welfare system. There's a lot of small nonprofits. It might be a nonprofit that's providing coats for kids in the winter, right? I mean, these smaller level nonprofits, if you just want to reach out to whoever their director is and say, we just want to send you a copy of this legislation. We're really working hard to get advocates trained in the states, and if would like to have a conversation with you. Now, if you want to set up a phone call where I can join the phone call, we can also do it that way, so that we can either set up a Zoom or a phone call and talk to him like that. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Okay, good. Tracy, you're muted still.
Yes, ma'am. Brandy
there you
D in chat earlier asked exactly what a family advocate was. And I was just making sure her question was answered. Brandy D, do you understand what a family advocate is now?
I do. Sorry, I'm just new to all of this, so
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, Brandy. Okay.
Oh, I understand.
So, I'm looking at a couple of your comments here, if I can. It's a little bit difficult to do, but oh yeah, parent advocates. All right, so okay, so Brandy, yeah, so the parent advocates are what we are working on, and it's hard to get a parent advocate right now because with the confidentiality rules, they're not permitting advocates to participate. So that's why we have a law. Now, we do Family Forward Project. There are certain people in there who are just doing some advocacy as far as just, people send me messages all the time, and I try to give them a little bit of direction, or, maybe ask them some additional questions. But an advocate would be just sort of helping organize your case, helping you keep track of your case, helping you keep the timelines of your case, helping you identify witnesses. If you have not seen our trainings, Brandy, please watch those videos. They're actual slideshow presentations on topics. They're not forums like we're doing right now, but I already have up 10, I believe, trainings, and you can find them, and I'll repost them again in the Family Forward Project. But there is a YouTube channel called Family Forward, and I'm putting all the trainings in the Family Forward YouTube channel. That's about the only thing I'm putting in there. So if you would start by looking at some of those, I think it'd be helpful. Okay, Larry, question?
Question. I understand the bill you are making. How would that support on terminating parents' rights? A lot of parents' rights are getting terminated and not giving the kids back, and they're not giving us a reason why. They're just snatching kids. And I understand where you're coming from. So advocacy play a big part in that. And since you are a lawyer, used to be, still is in my play, yeah. How would that play out as we advocate ourselves up in DC? So a lot of parents come to me, my rights being terminated, that they stole my kids. I did all of my services, but they didn't give me the resources, or I had the resources. I finished the resources on time, and they still stole my kids. Like my kid's baby mama passed away, and I had two daughters, and I'm in the U.S. Supreme Court Appeals right now, and I go with Operation Stop CPS, Amanda Wallace, and I got J Mac.
Good.
Now I got you, Connie. I
Oh,
love
thank
you.
you.
You
Oh,
represent a whole bunch just like J Mac and you guys do. So I love to go. I'm in DC all the time. That's why I say I can make everything you say, I could do it. But how would that play part in your bill of getting established to state parents might bring our kids back home to us?
yeah, good. Yeah, thank you. And, Amanda, we've sort of worked, she's not a lawyer, but we've kind of traveled these sort of parallel tracks here. Like I watch a lot what she's doing, and I really appreciate her enthusiasm and her just persistence. So, yeah, so the TPRs that have already happened, this is a whole nother question, and I really don't have an exact answer on that at this point. We do want to expose that. Now, and I'm going to suggest to you, Larry, that you go to Google and you Google initiative to end TPR, ABA, which is American Bar Association. They have a whole initiative at the American Bar Association to end the termination of parental rights, and there's some very intelligent people there, and
Good.
you can actually sign up to participate in that. Also, in May, there is a multidisciplinary conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've already signed up for it, and I'm taking a couple people up there. So that will be meeting where they're incorporating more lived experience and trying to short circuit the TPR. For those who have lost their children due to fraud or just the whole negligence of the system, I don't know exactly how to unwind it, unfortunately. However, I say whoever's had their rights terminated needs to keep reaching out, staying focused, because I think a lot of those kids are going to end up coming back.
I do too.
Yeah, I think a lot. All
Not
right.
Yeah.
without
Okay,
scars.
so
Besides of the time we need to be there and what place we need to meet at.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
And the place we need to meet at. I got my Bluetooth. On the 13th of April, the place we meet at.
Okay, so April, right now, just that April 13th to the 17th or 18th, kind of get that marked on your calendar. Just pay attention. There's a few key people kind of working on it. We got to figure out what
Okay.
kind of accommodations and stuff we have. So we'll
Okay.
continue to work on it. Okay, I'm going to
Okay, cool.
stop our
Sounds good.
recording. Yeah.